Hello dear students, welcome to a new English session. This is chapter 23 and the topic for this lesson will be adjectives with able, tenses review, question forms. Please open your books on page 129. Unit number 8, Culture. American Sign Language. Exercise number 1. Read and listen to the text. Then write T for true or F for false.
Unit 8, Track 73, Activity 1.
American Sign Language. American Sign Language, ASL, has been one of the primary means of communication for the hearing impaired since the 1800s. At that time, Thomas Hopkins Gallaudet, an American deaf educator, helped develop a language and co-founded the first institution for the education of the deaf in the U.S., which is now known as the American School for the Deaf. Millions of Americans use sign language as their native language. The deaf community is very large, and the chance to interact in their own language is very important for them, especially if you understand that the language you speak represents your country's identity. Those who use sign language also love to see their language used before their eyes. Besides, sign language can help bridge the gap between those who can hear and those who are hearing impaired. Nowadays, the practice of teaching hearing children sign language is becoming popular all over the country. Studies have shown that learning ASL brings many educational benefits, such as having the opportunity to gain cultural heritage of the deaf community, which includes various forms of cultural expressions, such as visual poetry, theater, and folklore. Another key factor is learning about values, beliefs, social and educational aspects of the deaf community, which will certainly help understand other cultures as well.
Option A. ASL has been the only means of communication of the hearing impaired for a long time. This is false. Option B. Thomas Hopkins Gallaudet, whose son was deaf, helped develop a language for the deaf community. False. Option C. Sign language can help bridge the gap between those who can hear and those who are hearing impaired. True. Option D. Nowadays, the practice of teaching hearing children sign language is not popular in the country. False. Option E. ASL provides no educational benefits. False. On part 2 and 3, we have personal opinion questions. Question number 2. What do you know about sign language in your country? Find as much information as you can about it. Question number 3. Would you like to learn your country's sign language? Why? Why not? Page 130. Vocabulary number 2. Adjectives with able and able. Complete the definitions with the adjectives in the box. Acceptable, bearable, flexible, reasonable, reliable, responsible, visible. A person or thing that you can see is visible. This is our example. Option A. A person who can deal with a lot of responsibility is responsible. Option B. A person you can rely on is reliable. Option C. A person who shows reasons is reasonable. Option D. A person who adapts quickly to new situations is flexible. Option E. A situation that you can bear is bearable. Option F. A situation or thing that you can accept is acceptable. Exercise 2. Match the adjectives from activity 1 with their opposites in the box. For example, acceptable and unacceptable. The next opposites are flexible and unflexible, bearable, unbearable, reasonable, unreasonable, reliable, unreliable, responsible, irresponsible, visible, invisible. On exercise 3, listen, check, and repeat.
Unit 8, Track 74, Activity 3.
Acceptable, unacceptable, bearable, unbearable, flexible, inflexible, reasonable, unreasonable, reliable, unreliable, responsible, irresponsible, visible, invisible.
Exercise 4. Complete the sentences with words from Activity 2. Example: Lucy never does anything she says she will do. She's very unreliable. Option A. We complained because their behavior was irresponsible and unacceptable. They completely destroyed the house. Option B. The magician made the rabbit invisible. You couldn't see it at all. Option C. This situation is awful. It's really unbearable. I just can't tolerate it anymore. Option D. John is very inflexible. He doesn't like changes. Option E. My mom said I couldn't go to the party. She is so unreasonable. Reading 2. Exercise 1. Look at the cartoon's self-portrait. What 3 questions would you ask their cartoonist? Exercise number 2. Read and listen. Did you have similar questions?
Unit 8, Track 75, Activity 2.
The man behind the chickens. Cartoonists are some of the most adaptable and creative people when it comes to communicating a complex idea in a small space. Doug Savage is best known for his Savage Chickens webcomic. Each cartoon is drawn on one single sticky note. Here, he tells us all about himself. Why do you draw chickens?
I drew cartoons a lot when I was younger, but when I started working in an office, I slowly lost the ability to draw. When I started drawing cartoons again, chickens were the only thing that I remembered how to draw.
When did you start drawing chickens?
I started drawing the chickens in autumn 2004, and I began posting them online in January 2005.
Why did you decide to start a webcomic?
I wasn't enjoying my office job because it wasn't very creative, so I was looking for some sort of artistic activity. A lot of people were starting blogs at the time. I thought it would be fun to create one too, so I started putting my comics on the web.
Did you read comics when you were younger?
Yes, I did. As a child, I read all the comic strips I could find at the local library, especially Peanuts. I've always enjoyed authors who combine art and storytelling, such as Richard Scarry, Dr. Seuss, and Raymond Briggs.
What do you draw on?
I draw on actual yellow sticky notes, just like the ones you can find in an office. Then I scan them and edit the images on the computer.
What inspires you?
Everything, but mostly human behavior. People are so funny, and the world can be a very silly place.
What has been your biggest achievement so far?
A collection of my cartoons has been published in a book, which is incredible. But I'm also very proud of all the work that I've created over the past few years. I'm amazed that I've drawn over 1,600 cartoons.
What are your plans for the future?
I hope to publish more books and do more animation. And I'm always experimenting with new techniques, so I'd like to try more painting and maybe even write a graphic novel. I want to keep trying new things.
Exercise number 3. Read the text again. Then write T for true or F for false. Correct the false sentences. This is your Elico workshop of the week. Exercise number 3, reading 2, page 130. Elico workshop, Elico taller, Elico workshop, Elico taller. Exercise 3, page 130. Page 131, Grammar 2. Tense review, question forms. Exercise 1. Read the sentences below. Underline the auxiliaries when provided. Option A. Why do you draw chickens? The auxiliary here is do. Option B. When did you start drawing chickens? The auxiliary is did. Option C. Who inspires you? There is no auxiliary here. Option D. What has been your biggest achievement so far? There is no auxiliary here. Exercise 2. Complete the chart below with the questions from Activity 1. Use the auxiliary when the subject is present in the question. For example, why do you draw chickens? When did you start drawing chickens? Don't use auxiliary when the subject is the question word. Example, who inspires you? What has been your biggest achievement so far? Option 3. Order the words to make questions. A. Will you write a blog post later today? Option B. What were you reading when your teacher arrived? Option C. What did you do before you came to school? Option D. Did you send any emails yesterday? Exercise 4. Complete the questions with the correct form of the verbs in parentheses. This is your Elico homework, Elico tarea, Elico homework, Elico tarea, page 131, Grammar 2, exercise number 4, from option A to option E. Page 132. Writing. A blog post. Read and listen and answer. What is the advantage of social networking sites?
Unit 8, Track 76, Activity 1.
What is the best way to communicate? I've been thinking about the different ways we communicate. On my blog today, I'm discussing the best method of communication. In the past, people only used to be able to communicate in person or by letter. However, nowadays, there are many different ways to communicate, such as email, phone, and chat rooms. As I see it, different forms of communication are more appropriate at different times. For example, it's better to spend time with your friends in person because you can enjoy their company. What's more, the best way to solve problems is face-to-face. However, when you are out and you need to give someone some information, then the quickest and easiest option is to send a text message. Finally, email and social networking sites are a good way of keeping in touch with a lot of people, especially if they live far away. To conclude, in my opinion, you should choose the best way to communicate depending on the circumstances. What do you think? Joanne.
Exercise number 2. Rewrite the sentences using the words in the box. As a result, finally, firstly, furthermore, I believe, on the other hand, secondly, whereas. Example, sending texts is easy, it is cheap. Linker of addition. Sending texts is easy, furthermore, it is cheap. Option A. Some teenagers stayed up too late sending messages. Opinion expression. I believe some teenagers stayed up too late sending messages. Option B. Texts are easy to send. Some people send far too many. Linker of result. Texts are easy to send. As a result, some people send far too many. Option C. Making phone calls can be expensive. Sending texts is cheap. Linker of contrast. Making phone calls can be expensive, whereas sending texts is cheap. Option D. There are several advantages to sending texts. Texts are cheap. You can send them from anywhere. They don't take long to write. 3 linkers of sequencing. There are several advantages to sending texts. Firstly, texts are cheap. Secondly, you can send them from anywhere. Finally, they don't take long to write. Option E. On the one hand, texts are easy to send. They can become addictive. Linker of contrast. On the one hand, texts are easy to send. On the other hand, they can become addictive. Language focus box. Checking your work. Option A. Check that you have used correct grammar, word order, spelling, and punctuation. Option D. Check that you have used linkers. Option C. Check that you have used appropriate expressions to give your opinion. Exercise number 3. Write a blog post from 150 to 170 words. Too many young people are addicted to social networking. What is your opinion? Writing a blog post. Step 1. Plan. Decide your opinion. What are the advantages and disadvantages of social networking? Step 2. Write. Write your first draft. Write 3 paragraphs. Think about what to include in each paragraph. Step 3. Check. Check your work. Have you used linkers and sequencing words? Step 4. Write. Write your final copy and hand in your work. And this is how we end chapter 23. We will meet again for our final chapter.